What's up, everybody, and welcome back to a Monday market analysis video. Now, as always, we're going to go ahead and do some technical analysis on gold. We've seen some interesting price action over the past couple of days, and luckily, we still have a ton of volume in the markets. And that's both, in my opinion, kind of both on the seller side and in the buyer side. But unless you guys disagree with me, like we talked about in the last session, gold from a fundamental standpoint still has remained very much bullish. And so when we look at it from a technical perspective, and especially starting off here, like for example, on the daily time frame, we see that overall, if you just zoom out on gold, we're still very, very much bullish and very interesting. Like today's daily candle, we closed very strong and we're pretty much starting to near these all-time highs once again. So I want to get started by marking off a couple of zones here on gold. Let's go ahead and get started with these most recent zones, and then we're going to take a look at other zones that we could potentially reach, right? So let's talk about this a little bit. We have this area of support here around the 3288 areas. So we can go ahead and mark that off. And to me, this is an important zone because you can see the amount of rejections that we've seen here on the daily time frame. If we look at the past, we see price leaving these wicks as well as you can see right here, which was in kind of like in the beginning of May. And then we have towards the end of April, a ton of wicks being left at this area as well, right? So this 3280s area is going to be that strong area of support that we'll be taking a look at. But as you can see on today's pretty much on today's candle, right? Because this was the first opening candle of the week, right? We can see that from that exact support, we saw price bounce and start to get above sort of this area of resistance that we have around here, which again, we can see sort of in the past, we do have the same thing, a lot of rejections around that area and price showing reactions at that spot. So let's go ahead and actually zoom in now. And we can see that clearly on the 4 hour as well, pretty much where price today on the 4 hour sort of reached and had a little bit of a pause before it really just broke above that area. On the 1 hour, we can see that as well, where price kind of reached that area, sort of had a pause, and then kind of did like a break and retest sort of pattern here before it continued towards the upside, right? So let's go ahead and go back to the 4 hour. So that way we can look at these zones here. So this area of support seems valid to have here, but you can see it's where price gapped up since the opening of this candle here on gold. I want to mark off this area right here as well, which is around 32.25s more or less, which is where price had this area of reaction and where we broke above that area. This zone, I do want to move it a little bit because on the 1 hour, you can see it very clearly. Like for example, right here, if we were to move this zone a little bit, let me just make it a lot more precise. We have this area right here where we have more reactions in the sense that we have a lot of these candles right here. And then we do have some wicks being left at this area as well. So I'd rather mark off that area and then kind of mark these lows as an area of reaction to be on the lookout for that. And then of course we have basically price creating this other area of reaction right here for us, right? So now we have multiple zones. If we are to zoom out now, we do want to go ahead and look at the left where we do have some potential targets to be on the lookout for. I'm going to go ahead and just mark off like these highs around the 34.18s more or less, where again, you do see price sort of created these highs and we have this reaction right here. So if price is just going to continue bullish, that could be a potential target there. But let's go back to the 1 hour and let's analyze this price action. In my opinion, we're seeing very, very strong bullish price action at the moment. So really the best thing for us to do at the moment is to really set ourselves up and continue to look out for more buys. The reason I say that is again, look at the opening of this new weekly candle and of that daily candle that we saw close bullish. We saw pretty much just continuous upside throughout London session. We had a slight pause just like coming into those pre-New York hours. But then once 8 a.m., 9 a.m. came about, you started to see, excuse me, let me delete that. You started to see again that strong bullish volume coming into the market. So again, best thing in my opinion for us to do right now is really just be on the lookout for further buys. If we can continue to stay sort of above these 33.70s, more or less around this area, So again, potentially target these 34.20s around here. If we do start to see some pullbacks, then it's likely that we are going to start to see some pullbacks below, for example, these lows here. So I want to mark that off like something like this. Like for example, if we start to see some pullbacks, we're going to most likely see price trading below this 33.69 area. And it's likely that price will possibly do some deeper pullbacks, maybe into these previous highs here or into these lows right here at 33.44, excuse me. So something like this. Either these lows, which again, it's these previous highs over here, to be on the lookout for further buys, or again, price doing some deeper pullbacks and stopping around these lows where price created this area right here. And then again, potentially just continuing higher. If we do start to see price getting below these areas, that's where I would assume that price is just going to be more on the bearish side, doing some deeper pullbacks, something like this, right? Potentially targeting like these lows. And then if we're just going to see more bearish price action, kind of going against that bullish analysis, then we know we can prepare ourselves again below these 33.25s and below these lows over here, the 32.80s. But it's pretty far away. But with gold, you never know. You know, with gold, you have these strong moves happen within a day. It's not random. It's not something that's crazy. Honestly, with gold, like if you look at the moves that it has, they're pretty volatile, right? Like if you look at these sort of moves, like these are very, very strong moves towards the downside. You see very strong bearish volume again over and over and over again, and you see it on the opposite side as well. Strong bullish momentum, strong bullish volume, continuous highs, lows, right? So you do get that combination on gold, which again for me it's why it's one of my favorite pairs to trade because it has so much volume. But that's pretty much going to be it for our analysis for today here on gold. Unless anybody has any more questions, we're going to go ahead and leave it like that, keeping it nice and simple for you guys. Seems like we're all good, yes? SPX? Sure, we can look at SPX. I believe I don't have it marked up, so we can do some fresh analysis. All right, let's go ahead and do some analysis on SPX. Sort of looks, I don't want to say similar, but like similar to gold, like when we saw on the daily time frame. Sort of had like a move towards the downside before price once again recovered, made a little bit of a pause, and now it's sort of continuing. On SPX, you're kind of seeing that right here, right? That strong move towards the downside, that recovery, a little bit of that pause, which we can see is this. So it's possible that price could continue bullish, but let's go ahead and mark off some zones so that way we can actually validate that analysis. So let's say, for example, we wanted to continue bullish on SPX. We have these highs at 59.66 to be on the lookout for, which we do want to get above because as you can see, price above this area, or excuse me, at this area has seen a pause and price rejecting already this area, which was, I believe, last week. Let's zoom in here and we can see also some sort of sensitivity around this zone, right? We can tell by the wicks that are being left here and the reactions that we see towards the left, for example, at 58.61 multiple times. So multiple times price reacted around this area. And let's go ahead and actually zoom in on the 4 hour. On the 4 hour, that looks pretty clean as well, but we can make that even more precise and leave it right around here. So around the 58.40s, just above the 58.40s, we have that area of support here on the 4 hour. And you can see that again, just kind of, at least for me, I always like to validate my zones by looking at the reactions. You see plenty of reactions. Look at the range that was basically created within this area, right? So that always is going to tell you when it comes to looking at price action, clearly that there's a lot of interest or a lot of interaction between the buyers and the sellers at that area. So for us traders, those are the areas that we want to get involved in, right? So again, you see price creating that support for us, some rejections that we did have on today's 4 hour candle during, I believe this was like around, New York session, if I'm not mistaken here. If we look at the 4 hour, or excuse me, the 1 hour, yeah, this was around, yeah, basically around the opening of today, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. This is where that volatility kicked in. And you saw prices get very, very close to this area, but you also had this zone right here, which again, same thing. Look at the amount of reactions, the amount of wicks, the amount of bodies and rejections that you have at this area. Price got just around that zone before in the afternoon hours, you did break above that area. Now, this zone right here, I do want to make this a little bit more precise as well. I want to mark off these lows, which is the 59.75s, and you can see that it lines up with these highs over here towards the left. And then we have overall that resistance over here at these highs. Now, the reason I want to mark that off is because, again, we want to be prepared just in case price does continue bullish, because we have seen some very, very strong buyers coming into the market. So again, just be on the lookout for any sort of potential pullbacks, excuse me, possibly retesting these highs or just continuations above these highs over here. So I'm going to mark that off in green so we can have that. Again, just sort of continued moves and continued buys above these zones. Be on the lookout around these highs and then just kind of on the lookout for there. Excuse me, on the lookout for buys there. Any sort of sellers, in my opinion, would have to be if we do reject these highs, as we're sort of having a reaction right now. And if we do start to get below these areas right here, like around the 59.10s, let's call it, be on the lookout for any sort of deeper pullbacks against that bullish price action here. So that would be our analysis for SPX. Looks good in my opinion. Again, just overall following the trend, which has been more bullish over the past couple of sessions here. All right, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a stream here and just stop the recording.